This podcast contains adult language and stories of true crime. If you don't like laughing, crying, or being horrified at the actions of other humans, this podcast is not for you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Resolve Mysteries, the podcast.
Hello.
Hi. This is the podcast where we rewatch episodes of Unsolved Mysteries on Amazon Prime. But also, you can now watch it on YouTube, Tubi TV, or Pluto TV.
Yay.
Thank you.
For free.
Yeah. Thanks, listeners, for telling us all the places we can now watch.
Yeah. Thank you.
So this is a podcast where we
podcast.
we rewatch Unsolved Mysteries. We each take a case or two and provide you with the latest updates. Our episode numbers match up with the episode numbers on Amazon Prime or wherever you're watching it. Do we know if the other ones are sorted in the same order?
YouTube is for sure.
They all are.
Okay, they are all sorted in the same order, so their episode number matches up with ours, so you know which one you want to watch before you listen to us. Every month, we choose a different organization to donate to. We donate $1 per review we receive. And this month, we are going to be donating to the Give a Little Fund for the victims of the Christchurch shooting. So please go and leave us a review, and it'll go towards a great cause. Do you want to talk about Discord?
Yeah. So we have two new ways of engaging with you guys, and they were both set up by our listener, Tansy from Australia, and she is now officially our tech guru. She's amazing.
Shout out, Tansy.
Yeah, girl. You're the best.
I want to say your name in an Australian accent, but I won't.
Tansy?
But
Tansy?
they're practicing. So, girl, it's coming.
We've been practicing.
Maybe episode 17 or so, you're going to be really wowed by these Australian accents because
She might hate us, though.
let me tell you, these two girls want to come to Australia. So Australia,
do.
tell your friends. Give us a
Yes.
reason to come and visit,
Please.
okay? So Tansy has set up a subreddit for us. So if you go to Reddit and you just search Resolve Mysteries, you can subscribe to that. And that's where a lot of our fans are going that are on the Facebook group. And it's just a more casual way for people to chat. There's different channels. And then if you're a Patreon and subscribe at the $5 level, there is a app that's associated with Patreon, and it's called Discord. Basically, if you're at the $5 Patreon level, you will get an invitation to join Discord. Just say yes. Because what we're eventually planning on doing is doing listener parties and AMAs, and it's another way for us to engage with you guys, and we can do it via chat or we can do it via audio. So if you want to hang out with us, that's probably going to be the place to do it.
Yeah.
It's a really cool setup. Tansy is a fucking queen, and she's currently explaining it to us. So we just need a couple more tutorials, and we're going to be ready to go. And I think we're sort of loosely talking about maybe doing the season finale as a listener party. So if you do want to subscribe, we'll keep you posted on that. That starts at the $5 level. So if you subscribe to us and you didn't accept the Discord invite, just send us a message on Patreon and we'll resend an invite to you, and we can all hang out there.
Yeah, super fun.
Yeah, it's pretty rad.
Join us.
Yeah.
And speaking of Patreon, we have a few patrons we want to shout out.
Yay!
First one is username Dallas, Texas, which her name is Ruth, Kat H, Anita F, Kate M, Stephanie S, and Alyssa T. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you so much. And we just sent out our stuff for our March Patreons. So you guys are going to get cards and stickers and whatever level you subscribed at. I just sent them out today.
You might have already gotten them by now.
I got my first Australian stamp.
Fun.
Oh, you have to have a separate?
I thought I was going to have to put it in like a separate envelope, which is what you have to do sometimes. But she just gave me a little stamp, and I was like, look at that.
I saw that, but
Nice.
interesting.
Isn't that cool? Yeah. So one of our Australian listeners is going to be rocking a Resolve Mysteries podcast sticker.
Awesome.
Oh, I want to say it in an accent, but I won't.
Don't worry. Keep practicing.
No,
though.
no, no.
Maybe
Try it.
I think like episode 17 should be your premiere.
No, I can just see the iTunes reviews
Oh,
now.
I know.
You could do the whole intro.
A good 1 star. I liked our typical 1 star, but then I love everything about this podcast except this, and then they only give us 1 star.
I love everything about this podcast except for the girls that do it.
Bitch.
Fuck you.
Oh my gosh, don't say our typical 1 star like it's typical for us to get
that's
ones,
true.
But
we're still
LOL
pissed
to
off
the ones
about
we
it.
have gotten.
Yeah, they're really
You
exceptional.
guys have some good stuff.
They are silly.
Oh, I was going to be like, what's everyone talking about tonight? But I go first.
It's you, girl. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about the first segment is the story of Micki Jo West.
I have got a Lost Love segment about the Orphan Train and just all about the history. I'm going to let you guys know a lot of information and then 3 different long lost sibling stories as well.
Oh my-
And then we've
Oh,
got
shit.
a whole monster of a segment.
Okay, so this episode's a little bit different than normal because the last segment is about Dorothy Allison, a psychic, and within that segment there are a few different stories. So we've kind of broken it up in a different way. I'm going to talk about the history.
Carlin.
Yeah, and then
Carlin.
I'll go into the story of Michael Kirksix,
And I'm talking about John DeMars.
and then I'll be talking again. This is Carlin,
Oh, I'm Eliza.
and I'll be talking about Susan Jacobson.
And then I'm going to finish it out talking about the disappearance of Lori Zimmerman.
but they're all
Big
about
ol'
a psychic.
Dorothy Allison party.
Yeah. Okay, before we get to our episode, we have our very first billboard.
Yeah!
Yes, I keep forgetting.
I don't even know what it says because I wasn't engaged.
Oh my gosh,
honey.
it's the best.
Okay, so before we get started, before I read it, a billboard is something that you can get for someone you love very much. And our very first one ever is from David. And he's stationed at Camp Pendleton in California. And he says, David wants to say hi to his beautiful wife, Mona. Unsolved Mysteries should do an episode about how Mona is so supernaturally gorgeous. Oh, I know. And right now, the best part is when this episode drops, they are going to be in Paris on their honeymoon.
Dream.
So big congratulations to them. And also, David, thank you so much for your service to our country.
Yes, absolutely.
And we love you, Mona, and we love Lola. They have this adorable dog who Mona has posted a picture of Lola watching a Robert Stack Unsolved Mysteries episode.
That's
The best.
amazing.
So Lola's also a resolver, our first animal resolver.
Yay!
Mona, you got a good one. He sent us a picture of you just to prove how gorgeous you are. And you are deliciously gorgeous.
You're delicious.
Oh my God.
Sweet.
Yes.
Yeah, it was so cute.
So thank you, David, also for reaching out. And if you would like to do a billboard shout out for someone you know who listens, you can go to the support page of our website, resolvedmysteriespodcast.com. And on with the show.
Yeah. So, the first segment of episode 15 is it's a wanted segment, and it's the story of Micki Jo West. September 11th, 1979, St. Joseph, Missouri. Micki Jo West leaves home to go to work and is never seen again. Ruth West says that she thinks she knows who did it, and she thinks she knows why they did it. They cut to Detective Sergeant Timothy Schwetter from the St. Joseph Police Department.
Shout out, Schwetter.
Oh my
I'm going to
God.
crack my can to you, Schwetty.
I'm going to have a hard time listening to that name 7,000 times.
I know, I
Truly.
know. Every time I say it, I'm like, don't say Schwetty, don't say Schwetty.
Schwetty bones.
So Detective Timothy Schwetter from the St. Joseph Police Department says they established a suspect the day after the disappearance. They talked to him several times, they know where he lives, and they know how to reach him, but they have no evidence against him at this point. And as we all know, you can't get a conviction on circumstantive evidence.
Circle, circle.
So Arden Locke, Mickey's father, says that he believes the number one suspect abducted her, and within 2 to 3 hours of that time, he believes he killed her. And he is like, it's nerve-wracking slightly that he's so like removed from this emotionally. And, you know, this point, it's like 10 years.
Right.
So, you
I
know.
thought that about him, and I also thought that about one of our women's dads, and then Dorothy Allison segments.
I
was
think
like,
that they
is
just
really
kind of-
the dad. They don't act like.
I mean, I think they just sort of like shut down.
It's really sad.
They just become like really emotionally removed from the experience, I think.
I mean, Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can speak to that. At a certain point, you're like, this is a thing that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
can
you're
see that.
not going to
Yeah.
show emotion the way people assume you should
Yeah.
every time you talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at the time of her disappearance, Micki Jo was only 19 years old, and she was 2 weeks shy of turning 20. She worked at a nurse's aide in St. Joseph State Hospital. In the reenactment, she looks really tiny. Like, she looks like she's like 5 feet. Her glasses are bigger than her head, but in real life, she was 5 feet 5 inches and 150 pounds. So, and she was scrappy. Like, she did not mess around. Ruth West, who's Micki Jo's sister-in-law, says that Micki Jo had a great sense of humor and that even when she was having a bad day, she would cheer her up by saying something funny. Mr. Stack tells us that Micki became involved in a marital dispute between a friend of hers, and she began to receive threats from the friend's husband. Ruth says that the last time she talked to Micki on the phone, that she was scared for her life and that she was going to carry a hammer to work with her. And I was like, yeah, get that, girl. That's crazy.
I mean, I wonder if she even called the police about that.
I don't think she did. I mean, I don't think she did. And her mother was the one that gave her the hammer. So like her mother was like, here, take this to like protect yourself.
It's probably also like they thought if they called the police, they wouldn't do anything about it.
Which
Yeah,
they
they probably wouldn't.
don't.
Which is accurate.
Yeah.
Yep. Because here we are 10 years later.
Here we go.
And everyone's just whining about how there's no evidence. So the next morning, after she got the hammer, she left her house to go to work. She was headed to a bus stop, and that was the last time anyone ever saw her or heard from her. Detective Schwetter comes on, and he says that there's no body, so Micki is still just a missing person. And he says without a body, they can't convict anyone of murder, which is not actually true, but it's rare. It's only happened 28 times in the United States, and some of the more notable ones were the murder of Grace Budd at the hands of Albert Fish because he ate her. And the murder of Eton Patz in 1979, which was a really big deal where I'm from because it was one of the first times in Manhattan that basically an adorable little white kid had gone missing. And the mother, it was the first time that he was walking to this bus stop alone, the school bus stop. The mother stood on the fire escape and watched him walk halfway down the street towards the parents and the other children. So she went back in the house because she assumed he was going to make it the other half of the block.
And like people are probably looking down towards a little boy walking towards them.
And then he never came home.
That is
Yeah.
so heartbreaking.
And then this guy, Pedro Hernandez, it was a huge deal in 2010 when he finally confessed. But he had disposed of Eton Patz's body in just a dumpster. So, I mean, it was long gone. And he was convicted because I think they were able to get enough information to get Hernandez to confess. So then, you need a confession if you don't have a body, essentially.
Yeah.
And then the most recent conviction was in 2017 of a man named Lloyd Lee Welch. And he had murdered Catherine and Sheila Lyon. He had abducted them from a shopping mall. And it was 42 years before they were finally able to go into his house and like look through his possessions. And they found the girl's possessions among his
Was
possessions.
that, do you know, two sisters?
Yeah, they were two sisters. Yeah.
And like
He took them from a mall.
just holding on to their stuff all those years.
42 years. So they found stuff that they were able to get DNA off of the things, but they didn't find the bodies of the girls. But they were still able to convict him because, like, come on.
Yeah.
And usually they know that the person did it, but they just have to wait and wait and wait. It's crazy. And the issue is because a lot of times the verdict gets overturned if there's no body. It happens really frequently. So it isn't cost effective for a prosecutor to do this whole thing just to then spend all this money and have to then redo it when the person gets out on appeal.
Especially if they convicted them without the confession, but just with enough evidence. And the person is just going to keep saying they're not guilty and appeal and appeal and appeal.
Yeah.
They can do that as long as there's no body because they know there's maybe nothing else that anyone will find against them until they find the body.
Exactly.
Maybe it is going to be impossible to find or nearly impossible. So
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So they say that Micki Jo is just a missing person at this point, and they have evidence that this person made threats to Micki and that they followed her, but they don't have a body. So Mr. Stack tells us that for 7 years, no evidence was found. And then in 1986, a delivery man at a Kansas City. That was not a Freudian. Kansas, we love you. I'm sorry. A Kansas City shopping mall, 75 miles from where she disappeared, found a letter. And the envelope was addressed to the St. Joseph police. It read, quote, "I need your help. I was with blank because they can't say the person's name. When he killed Micki Jo West and hid her body. I can kill myself now. Please help. Obviously, the letter was unsigned. This letter, we're going to post what it looks like, but I think it looks like it was written by a child. I don't know how the delivery guy got this letter. I don't know. They don't give any details, and I have so many questions, but typical.
So vague, yeah.
Yeah. So then Schwetter comes back on and tells us that about a month later, on October 2nd, another note is found in the mall. A security guard found a note in the hallway. And initially I was like, well, just look at the tape. You know, like I had to start researching when CCTV started in malls, and I couldn't find any information. The only thing that I could find was like, at this time, banks were just starting to use it. So like we take for granted that we have so much grainy footage post 9/11, but like nobody had anything like this.
Right.
You know, even banks hadn't had stuff. Yeah. Obviously, both of the notes named the man. That is still the prime suspect, but they can't come up with any solid leads as to who authored the note. So 7 weeks later, 3 more letters are found. These letters were found in St. Joseph. The first was discovered in a shopping mall. The second was discovered at a local truck stop. And then another letter was found by a janitor in the same St. Joseph's shopping mall. This guy's just like dropping letters.
You're just making it rain letters.
Everywhere. And nobody's witnessing anything.
So strange.
It's so weird. I mean,
and some of them I feel like were in places that you wouldn't even necessarily for sure find.
Didn't they show like that kid finding it in like a plant by a fountain or something?
Yes, it was like up on the top of a thing behind a fountain.
So like what if that kid
hadn't been found?
Yeah. Exactly. So like how many weren't found?
Yeah,
like maybe maybe he stashed them all over the place. It's so weird.
It's so weird.
So
Such a strange approach.
Yeah. Schwetter says that all 5 notes say the same thing. They name the same person, but that it doesn't bring them any closer to making an arrest. In every letter, this person is saying that they're going to kill themselves, but time is passing. So the letter guy's still dropping envelopes. It might be an empty threat, but if it isn't, you can like start looking for suicides in the area. I think that there's a lot that could have been done. But nothing was done, and they just kept saying it was because there was no body. They initially considered the notes could be a hoax, but then they said because of the detail given and the way they're written and the feelings expressed, they just seem realistic, and I agree. Whoever wrote the note was involved somehow with this crime.
I'm also wondering, too, like how many maybe were found but not turned in because people didn't think it was real.
Yeah, people were probably like, oh,
if
yeah,
they weren't
sure.
putting it on the news or
Especially
whatever.
with that weird handwriting.
Yeah.
They might have just been like, oh, this is someone playing around.
Exactly. Like, who knows how many notes were, like, initially dropped. FBI Special Agent R. Stephen Mardigan says that it was obvious to the FBI that the person who wrote this was intimidated by the person who killed Micki Jo. And I was thinking, well, then the police officer should work backwards, and they already have a suspect that they're pretty much sure did it. So then, like, go talk to his circle of friends, and whoever the weakest link is probably the person that wrote these notes.
Yeah.
There's so much police work that could have happened that didn't.
Or or at least like trail this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put a tail on him, do something.
At some point later in my reading, the dad, Micki Jo West's dad, is interviewed, and he says that like, he never stopped watching this suspect. Like he watched him for years. He was like, I knew where he was at all times.
That
you know,
would
like
be so
so like
hard.
why didn't the police do that? I don't know. Yeah. It's so weird. It just feels like they kind of dropped the ball. Then on January 13th, 1988, 9 years after Micki's disappearance, another letter shows up at a Kansas City mall theater. Okay, well then go to the suspect and then look for former associates that are now living in Kansas City because it's not the same town as St. Joseph where these letters were found.
And was
like
the
this
9
person
years
clearly
later
wants
note
to talk.
Still the same, or was it slightly different?
It was the same one. Oh, they all said the same thing. That the notes that UM talks about all said the same thing. They didn't. All of the notes were found that didn't say the same thing, but the ones that UM is discussing did.
Yeah.
So 8 months after that, another letter shows up. So it's been 9 years and 8 months. It's been almost 10 years, and this person is still writing letters. It's crazy.
It's totally crazy.
This letter shows up for Thurman Mitchell, who was a reporter at the local TV station KCTV5. In the letter Mitchell received, the writer wrote that if Mitchell would come alone, he would show him where Micki Jo was. Like, fucking hard pass on that. And he said he didn't want the reward. He wasn't involved in the crime, but that he needed help. Like, he keeps saying, please help me. So Mitchell got on TV and asked the person to come forward. He told the witness to call the phone number on the screen and talk to the station, and they'd pass the information on. Because clearly the news reporter's belief was like, well, obviously this person wants to talk.
Right.
So like, let's let them speak anonymously.
I wonder why it was a call for that guy specifically and what he would have done to that guy if he had gone.
I don't know. I bet he wouldn't have shown up. I bet whoever wrote the letter wouldn't have shown up.
That reminds me of Zodiac when they have one of the guys claiming to be the Zodiac call in. Remember when that guy was like making all those fake phone calls?
Yeah.
But they thought it might be him, and then he would like cry and be irrational. And he called into that TV show a few times. It seems like they were doing stuff like that around this time too, as a way to keep suspects anonymous, but maybe get them to talk if they just went off the rails.
Yeah. And this person's clearly unbalanced, so the chances of them going off the rails is pretty high.
Yeah.
The person never contacted them. They never called. And as the airing of the case, the letter writer is still anonymous, but I don't think he has to be if anybody did their fucking job. So Schroeder says that this witness is the most important person they could have in this case, but he's not going to look for him. No, I'm just kidding.
What?
He's like, that's really hard, guys. I don't think so.
It's a lot of work.
Tired.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like a lot of work. You know, I'm going to follow this guy? I think that there was a little bit of police mishandling of this case, in my opinion.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Just a schweddle bit.
Just a schwiddle bit. So he says that if this person knows where she is, if this person was there at the murder, and if this person's willing to testify, then this person is absolutely crucial. And I'm going to say that if even that person is one of these things, you might want to interview them, Schroeder.
They don't have to check all three
They
boxes.
don't have to check all three. They're probably at home watching like, never
He's
mind.
like, I'm only interested if it's the easiest.
Yeah. So Micki Jo's father is, he's a heartbreaker throughout this entire case. Decades. He's just, all he wants is justice. Because he knows who did it.
Yeah.
Everybody knows who did it.
So frustrating.
Which is so crazy. And at this point, it's been 10 years. I would be on TV like a mad woman.
Yeah. Like, are
Not
you guys
being able
kidding?
to say this person's name. I would just sit there repeating the person's name over and over again and saying it really fast.
Seriously.
They couldn't bleep me out the entire time, you know?
Or like have it written on your eyelid.
Yeah, exactly.
Just take some long blinks.
Indiana Jones style.
Yeah, I love that. I remember seeing that when I was a kid and being like, oh my God, that's fucking brilliant.
Me too. I loved her. I was like, I want to do that someday to my professor.
Yeah, me too. I know,
No,
right?
it's really gross.
I know. So Micki Jo's father makes a plea for the person to come forward or at least write a letter and tell the family where she is or give a phone call just like, please come forward. And then Ruth West closes the segment by saying they miss Micki and it's been 9 years. It's so sad. So the update... I was going to be really annoyed if there wasn't an update because it seemed kind of obvious that this case was solvable. The update is that Marvin Lee Irvin was arrested and convicted of the murder of Micki Jo West and 2 other women. He is serving 3 consecutive life sentences. And that's the update. 2 sentences. So you're kind of left wondering, like, was Marvin Lee Irvin the, quote, suspect that they kept talking about? Or was this just like an act by a woman-hating wacko? And my update, the answer is yes to both. Ugh. Marvin Lee Irvin, whose name was not revealed at the time of the broadcast, had allegedly threatened Micki because she became involved in the bitter marital dispute between he and his wife, Ruth West.
What?
Yeah. So Ruth was her best friend and her sister-in-law. Her brother Calvin was Micki's husband. They don't say that in the episode, and I guess like Ruth was scared or
weird.
But Ruth keeps referring to her friend, and it's Ruth. Like, what the hell? It's so weird. So shortly before her disappearance, she told Ruth that she was really frightened of the threats. The family knew it was him, but there was nothing they could do. Marvin Lee Irvin was a former police officer. I mean, he was like technically a police officer, but he was accepted and then resigned a few months later. Yeah. And the police won't go into detail. Like, they say he resigned for personal reasons, and I think like the personal reason was that he was an inhumane fucking garbage person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like he was like, I can't do this job. I can't protect and serve because I'm a murderer and an abuser and a kidnapper. He was
asked to resign,
and a child rapist. Like, I mean, he's a nightmare. Yeah. He allegedly had threatened Micki Jo in the weeks prior to her disappearance due to her involvement. And he physically abused his wife, Ruth. I found this comment by this person, Justin S., 5256 on sitcoms.com. This person says, Ruth Ann was Micki Jo's sister-in-law and best friend. She was married to Ruth Ann's brother. Ruth Ann had a son by Irvin when she was about 15 in 1976. Irvin was about 25. He had numerous underage, quote, girlfriends and children with those girls. Ruth Ann married Irvin in 1978 or 1979. Irvin was a drug addict and a drug dealer and beat Ruth repeatedly over the course of their entire relationship. I witnessed one of those beatings before they were married and befriended Ruth for a short time. Ruth Ann was also a violent person and was known for battering other girls that Irvin had relationships and children with. So this is like a real
What a beautiful couple.
Yeah, this is a real like Jerry Springer scenario.
Yeah.
So a few weeks before Micki vanished, Ruth and her young son fled their home and secretly got a room at the Pony Express Motel in Elmwood, Kansas. Ruth said that she only told her mother, her sister, the couple that dropped her off, and Micki. So this led investigators to believe that Marvin abducted Micki and forced her to tell him their whereabouts. However, at the time, there was no physical evidence to suggest that he was involved. And he also passed a polygraph test, which is who cares?
Yeah.
Polygraph tests are, when can we stop with those, really?
Truly.
You know, like, when can we just call it on that?
Because you can just be really great at lying.
Yeah. You know, murderers are. A short time after Ruth and Marvin filed for divorce in October 1979, Irvin moved to Iowa with another woman. Okay, so I'm going to need you guys to just keep up because all this segment is about is women that Irvin threw it into. I mean, it's just like ex-girlfriends and wives everywhere.
Okay.
Yes. So it's going to get vague because none of these women are named. Just please, sorry, apologies in advance. It's very confusing. Irvin moved to Ames, Iowa with another woman. He worked for the railroad as a track worker, but then that marriage failed. And in 1988, he assaulted a new girlfriend he was living with in Iowa, whose name was Janet Haugerich. She complained that Irvin pulled a gun and started firing bullets over her head. Gosh. He then led 20 officers on a car chase through 3 counties, and he pleaded guilty on 2 weapons charges, violations, and eluding officers. He was set free and given 5 years probation in August 1988. In May 1989, he beat Haugerich up again at a convenience store near Des Moines, Iowa. He was sent to prison for violating his probation, but he served less than 6 months. Then he returned to St. Joseph around May 1990. Back in Missouri, he married a woman who was once named against him as a witness in a paternity suit. And then by that November, he was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder.
Oh my God.
So this guy, as of 1974, he was arrested for raping a 15-year-old girl, but the girl couldn't press charges. Like, I'm sure she was scared out of her mind. It was 1974. This is like these are like very kind of like lower income
So
neighborhoods.
he's just been doing this for years and years and years.
And he's been, but he's not getting away with it. He's getting caught.
And
then
still
And getting released.
still getting away with it.
Because like basically the people that he's abusing and preying on are women of like a certain economic class and social class.
Yeah.
You know?
And no
like,
wonder he keeps doing it because he's like, it doesn't really matter.
no,
I'll
because
be
he's
in jail
getting
for like
away
a
with
little
it.
bit.
Every time he gets away with it, I'm sure he gets a little bit more aggressive and a little bit bolder, you know? In 1988, Marvin Lee was arrested for attempting to kidnap his girlfriend. This happened before the Unsolved Mysteries episode aired, and police in Jefferson, Iowa had called Schwader. So Schwader's through this entire thing. I mean, he's like in this until he retires, basically. And it was more than a year since his last interview with Marvin Irvin. They told Schwader that serious charges had been filed against Irvin because this was when he pulled the gun on his ex-girlfriend or his ex-wife. I can't keep up. It was at the end of the high-speed chase. So the woman in the case, Haugerich, the one that I talked about before, she eventually spoke to the police officers about Irvin. She told the police officers that Irvin had bragged more than once about killing a woman in St. Joseph, a woman who was related to his ex-wife in some way. I mean, all these people are like, he did it. He said he did it. He did it. And they're
he's
like,
just telling everyone.
we just need more evidence. If we could just get a little bit more evidence. So he said that he killed a woman related to his ex-wife. Her body was buried somewhere in a cornfield. And then the girlfriend said that Irvin threatened her and told her she could end up the same way if she told anybody else. And then Detective Schwader and another detective drove to interview another girlfriend. And I know, this is all girlfriends. Like, if you're going to be a murderer,
So many.
maybe don't tell every person that you've ever slept with.
Yeah.
You know?
Especially if it's like a million people.
Yeah, especially if like your body count is really fucking high in both ways. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this girlfriend said that Irvin talked frequently about the St. Joseph murder. She said that someone had helped him move the body. She said that he said he enjoyed killing and had killed other women. She didn't know any of the names or where the bodies were buried, but she knew someone who might. So then she referred the detectives to one of Irvin's ex-wives. And the wife was originally from St. Joseph, which is where Micki Jo was murdered.
Right.
The detectives drove to another town. They found the ex-wife. And at first she said that she wasn't involved. And then she broke down and she said that when she was 16, she was one of Irvin's girlfriends, in addition to the wife he had. And a few days after Micki Jo disappeared, he showed up and he told her that Micki Jo had gone to the bus stop, and that he went after her, and that he was alone. He confronted Micki Jo, hit her, dragged her semi-conscious into the vehicle, and that she told him where Ruth was hiding, and then he killed her with the help of others, and then buried her body in a cornfield near White Cloud, Kansas. So like people are telling the same story. Yeah. And then Schwetter says this was the first time that anyone had given us direct evidence of Irvin's involvement in the disappearance. But I'm like, I don't think
How
so.
is this any different?
Yeah. So then the ex-wife referred the detective to another girlfriend.
Oh my God.
So I think we're on girlfriend number 4 at this point. And she said that she had helped Irvin dispose of the body. She talked about lifting the body up. She said that when they were driving over the train tracks to the cornfield, there was a bump and that she heard someone say, "Help me." So she's not sure if Micki Jo was alive the entire time in the trunk.
Right.
And then she said before they buried the body that Irvin got his shotgun and fired twice into the body just to be sure that she was dead.
And this girl was 16.
This is another girl. I don't know how old
okay.
she was. I know. I'm sorry.
Probably.
I mean, she was probably 16.
Yeah, his
'cause,
pattern.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that seems to be like what he's doing.
So, like, of course, she's just going to do everything he says.
Of course.
So
And like,
she's
this guy's probably
terrified.
terrifying.
And then be scared to speak up right away
Yeah,
because she's a child.
Yeah. Yeah. And she said that she had watched Unsolved Mysteries with Irvin a lot and that he would like frequently comment on the stupidity of the police. And she also said that she taped the segment with Micki Jo West and watched it with him, but he didn't make any kind of recognition whatsoever.
Which is insane.
Which is crazy. Schwetter says a jury would have hated her, but they would have believed every word that she said. So based on what she said, I guess because it was, quote, direct evidence, Marvin Irvin was charged with the kidnapping and murder of Micki Jo West. So, okay, so that's one part, right? So there is an ex-girlfriend now who can give direct testimony to being there the night that Micki Jo was buried.
Right.
The police are like, okay, let's go arrest this guy for the murder of Micki Jo West. They still don't have a body, and all they have is the word of this woman, right? Okay, so keep that. That's pile A.
Okay.
Okay, so in fall of 1990, Irvin was arrested and charged with the murders of Patricia Diane Rose, 31, and Crystal Lynn Simmons, 33. The two both vanished earlier in 1990. Patricia vanished on September 17th and Crystal on October 29th. So, okay, the way they got Irvin is crazy because it's like a million different things happening at once. It's like a confluence of events that is literary. I mean, it's so insane. So both of these women were brunettes. Both were single. They both went missing from St. Joseph, and it was a few months apart. Rose went missing on Labor Day weekend. Simmons went missing on Halloween, and both were last seen at local bars. Rose was seen at the Blue Town Tavern, and Simmons was at JJ's bar. So the detectives, when they were investigating this, they went and talked to a bartender, and the bartender said that he didn't know who Crystal had left with, but it was a black man with no front teeth. Irvin was arrested. He resisted arrest, and one of the police officers knocked his teeth out. So he's missing his front teeth. So like this is like
one of the times he got arrested.
One of the
for
times he got arrested.
abuse.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So clearly she was seen with him.
yeah. So clearly she was seen with him, but the bartender was like, I don't know him.
Yeah.
So they're investigating now these two murders. So Micki Jo is over here on the side. Now we're talking about these two women. While they're investigating these two women, the phone rings on Schwetter's desk. It's an investigator from the state prison in Cameron, Missouri. A letter to an inmate had been confiscated because it had raised the eyebrows of prison censors who read all the incoming and outgoing mail. The investigator told Schwetter part of the letter could be about the two missing women. Schwetter asked him to read that part. He began the first sentence with, quote, Marvin came home all bloody last night. It went on to describe Marvin giving a watch with blood on it to his wife, that his wife was afraid he had done something bad and wanted to leave him, and she was scared. Schroeder knew immediately that Marvin had to be Marvin Irvin. The investigator confirmed that when he said the letter was written by Marvin Irvin's sister to their brother in prison. The letter had been written 2 days after Crystal Simmons disappeared.
Oh, boy.
So everything fit Marvin. And so they went back to the bartender and they were like, do you know who this is? Because we know who this is.
Yeah.
And the bartender was finally like, okay, I know who it was Marvin Irvin, but I'm afraid of him. Yeah. Everybody's afraid of this guy in these like small towns, you know? Of course. He's a maniac. So they arrest Irvin with the information that they have, but they need more evidence because, again, it's just like, you know, people writing letters, I guess, isn't enough. I have no idea. Okay, so they need more evidence. The Sunday after they arrest Irvin, so he's arrested for Micki Jo, and now he's arrested for these women. The Sunday after they arrest him, a hunter finds a skull in a cornfield by White Cloud, Kansas.
Oh my God.
Which is exactly what all of the ex-girlfriends were saying Marvin said he did with the body of Micki Jo West, okay? So Schroeder and his colleagues get into the minivan and they head west. The cornfield is 200 acres. Corn, a pond, wells, windmills, woods. I mean, there's a million places to hide a body. The skull that they found had been dug up by coyotes, and a hunter had found it. The coroner said that the fatal blows to the cranium were fresh. Schroeder and this team were confident that this was one of their victims. The landowner told them that Marvin Irvin had hunted and fished on his land. Like, what the fuck?
He's the biggest idiot in the world.
I mean, he's so bold because he keeps getting caught and nobody's punishing him.
Yeah, and he just doesn't care.
He probably thinks that the women he's murdering are actually disposable people.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that's how everyone else is acting. Mm-hmm. You know, he's beating these women and shooting guns at them, and they're like, here's parole. It's insane. So the next day, 60 people in cadaver dogs start searching. There were officers from St. Joseph, the Missouri State Highway Patrol, the FBI, the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, the Kansas Highway Patrol, and local sheriff and police. Everybody was like, let's go. Let's go find these girls. One man arrived late and parked at a distance. He tromped across the field to catch up to the others and literally fell over the skeleton that belonged to the skull in a shallow grave. And this was Patricia Rose. The officers continued to search through the day without further success. One officer finally had to break away from the others to go relieve himself. He went off into the woods and thrust down his shovel. It went deeper than it should have. He looked down and saw hair sticking out of the ground. This was Crystal Simmons, 2 weeks to the day after her death, clearly recognizable in a shallow grave. Autopsy showed that both women were killed by blows to the head from a hammer. So within 2 weeks, you've got the ex-girlfriend finally fessing up. Mm-hmm. You've got the sister writing letters to the brother. And then you've got them finding the bodies. In one of the articles that I read, the detectives were like, we thought we were going to find a ton of bodies up here. Like, we thought we were going to find Micki Jo West. Like, you know, they're convinced that he's killed a lot of other people.
Right. He probably has.
And he probably has, yeah. Irvin's family actually owned property near there. That's why he was allowed to hunt and fish on that property. And the victim's jewelry was found in his home, along with the hammer that was determined to be the murder weapon. And the hammer, when they searched his house, was found next to his bed.
What the fuck?
And both of the victims' blood was found in his truck.
So it's a trophy.
I mean, it's obviously a trophy. It's literally the last thing you see when you fall asleep and the first thing you see when you wake up in the morning. A bloody hammer that you used to murder 2 women.
He likes to look at it.
I would call that a trophy. 100%. So he gets caught. He's like, I didn't do it. And then they're like, we found the bodies. So he's like, okay, I did it. And then he starts telling everybody, Micki Jo's buried up there too. I know where Micki Jo's buried. I know where Micki Jo's buried. She's buried up there too. They looked everywhere for her. And eventually Schroeder thinks that he wasn't being sincere and that he was just kind of jerking them around.
Yeah, just putting them on chase.
Apparently, in 1991, Irvin pled guilty to the first-degree murders of Patricia and Crystal as part of a plea agreement. And he also pled guilty to the second-degree murder of Micki so that the state would not seek the death penalty. But still, again, nobody has been found. At his sentencing, he went into graphic detail about killing the women and beating 2 of them to death after a minor altercation. Ruth Ann West was able to testify, and I don't know how she knew this information, but she said Marvin claimed that he got Micki Jo as she was walking to work. They argued. He beat her up, put her in the car to take her to the hospital, and that during the drive, she angered him by calling him a racial slur, so he stabbed her 4 times. And then he took her to the Highland cornfield, and then he shot her in the head.
Oh, God.
Which isn't the truth, because the other girl was there when he buried her.
Right. Yeah, no.
I mean,
I'm actually shocked he didn't kill Ruth as well.
I'm shocked. I think he couldn't.
Oh.
Like, at that point, if he would have killed her, they absolutely would have arrested him.
Yeah.
At least he got away, like, living free for another 11 years.
Yeah.
At Irvin's sentencing, he showed absolutely no remorse, and he blamed his victims. Like, he was like, no, she called me a racial slur, so I had to, like, stab her. Yeah. I mean, he's a monster. He was ordered to serve 2 life sentences without parole on the 2 first-degree murder charges and a consecutive life sentence on a second-degree murder charge. And then within that, there were a bunch of counts, and he got 100 years for each of those counts. Even still, the families were not happy. They wanted him to get the death sentence. Like, her Simmons' stepbrother said that he ought to be punished for it, I believe, in an eye for an eye. Arden Locke, like this long-suffering, he was like, I mean, yeah, I agree, but it's all we're going to get. There's no good outcome.
Right.
So he's convicted. He's sent away to prison. He keeps like dangling that he knows where Micki Jo is. They think that either she's under a cement floor that's part of a barn on the new owner's property. At the time, they used like the
Ground penetrating or whatever.
yeah, exactly. But nothing turned up. And then Schwetter theorizes that he has probably moved Micki Jo's body so many times that it could be around that area, but that he has no idea where. Yeah.
And when you move a body that many times, it's like less and less of a body.
It's
probably
less,
every
yeah.
time you.
It becomes more and more like
Yeah.
garbage.
Yeah.
So the last thing are the notes. Like all of these
right.
notes for years and years and years.
Yeah.
So one of the notes that wasn't on UM is really interesting. And I think they couldn't put it on UM because it either gave away evidence or it hadn't been found yet.
Okay.
One of the notes read, I seen Marvin kill Micki Jo West. He hide her body. They 2 other bones, heads there too. Dead people. If I tell, I will get killed. Please understand, I can't come out. This note was written years before Marvin killed these women. So they think that Marvin was the one actually writing these notes just to either like throw off the police or just because he was a stone cold maniac, but nobody else would know that Marvin was going to murder 2 women and bury them up in this cornfield.
Right.
So like I think he put Micki Jo there and kind of lost track of her, but he was using that cornfield as a dumping ground.
Yeah.
That's why when the detectives were up there, they expected to find so many bodies because they were like, he wrote this note 10 years ago. He's
Right.
had to have been stashing bodies up there.
Yeah,
like
he's been doing this.
Yeah, he knew it was a place where he could put them.
Right.
They think that at the end of the day, like he just wrote them himself,
Which is
either
so
to taunt
weird.
them,
Such
yeah,
to put his own name on
Strange
his own
behavior.
notes.
I mean, yeah, I really think that it has to do with like the fact that he had done so many things wrong to so many women and he never got punished for it.
Yeah. He's like, try me.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and put my name on that.
And like,
Yeah.
well, apparently the investigators at the time like admitted to not handling the case the best way because they didn't even basically. Micki Jo West's family was like, it is absolutely this guy, and they didn't even go search his car.
Yeah.
If they had, they would have found her blood.
I'm sure Ruth was like, hey.
If you beat somebody, put them in your car, and then stab them. I don't care how
Right.
well you clean the car. You're
Yeah.
going to leave blood traces. And they would have been able to find that
Why
and
did
just
they
match it
not
to her.
Get a warrant for
I don't
any of
know.
that?
I don't know if they didn't want to come near him because he was a former police officer and they were like embarrassed that they hired such a lunatic. I don't know if he had friends on the force. I don't know. I don't know if they were theorizing that Micki Jo, they could have been like, oh, she probably took off with a secret boyfriend like they always used to say.
Right.
But they totally dropped the ball. And because of it, like more women were abused
Yeah.
and more women were murdered.
Yeah. At least 2 died.
Yeah. And then around the same time, another note, what was this? In 1989, so 10 years later, a woman went missing in St. Joseph. Her name was Gloria June Palmer, disappeared leaving a bar, same thing. And a note showed up that said that he did it.
What the hell?
Yeah. So I think he killed her too. I think like 200 acres is a lot of land, and that kind of terrain.
So much.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to find anybody else if nobody's looking, but
Wow.
yeah, so that's the update to the 2-sentence update at the end of the first segment of Micki Jo West.
Crazy.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, so he's still in prison, and that's where he's going to sit. And he knows, people are like, he knows where these bodies are, but he's not talking. He has no reason to.
Yeah.
I doubt there's going to be a deathbed confession.
It's so
Yeah,
interesting
no.
to me that UM would take the time to record these little snippet updates and not just do a whole entire episode on it.
I
Yeah,
guess, like,
especially that one is really interesting.
Yeah.
and like we know now, like the way human behavior is, like everybody loves the updates.
Yeah.
You know, so to not have
And especially
once a
when you
season
say-
like an update show or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And like this is such an insane story.
Insane.
And they
Multiple
knew about
murders.
it because they did the updates in the aughts, and this was in the 90s. So they had all the information.
Yeah.
You know, so to just be like, oh, he was convicted. Oh, and he killed 2 other people. The
Yeah.
end. It's like, I'm sorry, what? Yeah, so I'm sorry that was very convoluted, but that is the
that
story
was
of
great.
Micki Jo West
gosh.
and Marvin Irvin.
Good job. That was
Such a
insane.
monster.
What
Yeah.
a monster.
And maybe like the longest list of murders of any of the
I think that
cases.
he is one of the most violent, prolific people we've seen so far.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think
Absolutely.
so.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thanks, girl. Are we recording?
We are.
Okay, so segment 2 is a Lost Loves segment, and it's about the Orphan Trains. This is like 3 stories wrapped into one, so I'll try to get through it in a way that's not horrible to listen to. It's very heartwarming, but also very depressing.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
the things.
And UM likes to surprise us with 3 segments in one.
They really do.
This one always makes me cry.
It's really sad. So I didn't know anything about the Orphan Trains.
Me
I didn't
neither.
know that was a
It's
thing.
so upsetting.
Yeah.
I'll read a little from Wikipedia if you also don't know about it. Around 1830, the number of homeless children in large eastern cities, such as New York, exploded. In 1850, there were an estimated 10,000 to 30,000 homeless children in New York City. At that time, New York City's population was only 500,000.
It's crazy.
Some children were orphaned when their parents died in epidemics of typhoid, yellow fever, or the flu, and others were abandoned due to poverty, illness, or addiction. Many children sold matches, rags, or newspapers to survive. For protection against street violence, they banded together and formed gangs. Hello, Newsies. Truly Newsies.
Although those kids were like a lot healthier and cleaner than I think these orphans were.
But literally just like trying to survive on their own.
I always think of Oliver Twist too.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, the orphan train movement was basically kind of the first welfare for children program that we tried to do in this country, which have always been fairly terrible.
Wasn't it through the Children's Aid Society? Is that
Yeah,
this
there's
one?
like 3 societies that work together.
Okay.
Children's Aid is one of them. So basically, what they would do is put children on a train and send them usually to the Midwest, and families often from churches or farm families would adopt them. And it gave the kids a home where they otherwise maybe wouldn't have a home, but they also often had to like work because they were living on a farm.
The farm families for sure were like free labor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Again, it's a time before they had like a true adoption system. There was no foster care even. And it was kind of the first step to where we are today. So it's interesting to see how far we've come and where it all started, but also our adoption and foster care system's pretty terrible.
Yeah.
I'm going to read something else before I get into the segments. This is a really interesting website that I found put on by the National Orphan Train Museum, which you can go to, and I'll talk more about that. But a descendant from an orphan train writer named D. Bruce Ayler wrote this. So this is him describing what it was like for the children to get on the train and then to get off. He says, when the trains pulled into the stations, the caretakers would get the children cleaned up, ready for inspection. And we see some of this on the reenactment.
Yeah.
The children would climb down the tall train car steps onto the platform and march to the meeting place. Sometimes this meeting place would be a baggage wagon on the train platform. Sometimes it was the local church. Sometimes it was the local opera house. Almost always, the children were up on a stage of some kind. This became known as being put up for adoption.
Whoa.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Oh my God.
Wow.
I love that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
me too.
know.
What is that called?
You fact check what it is, and I'm going to keep reading. Many times the children were inspected like they were livestock. Etymology
You're right.
is
Nice.
language.
Yeah.
Good job.
The study of the origin of words and the way in which their meanings have changed throughout history.
So that's like specific words. What is
Yeah.
the one for like phrases?
Phrases.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Sure.
I don't know.
Anyway,
But that's very interesting. Thank you.
yeah. Many times the children were inspected like they were livestock. Muscles were felt.
Yeah.
They
Teeth
showed that
were
in UM.
checked. Sometimes the children would, this is heartbreaking. Sometimes the children would sing or dance trying to attract the attention of new mothers and fathers.
That is so upsetting.
It was also frightening to have complete strangers looking them over and touching them.
Of course.
If they were lucky, someone chose them. Papers were signed and they went home with their new parents. While a local committee made sure that the new parents were fit to be parents, it was not much of an inspection compared to today. Last part, he says, one of the saddest parts of this procedure was often the new parents could not take more than one child. If brothers and sisters were lucky, they were taken by families in the same area so they could visit each other, but rarely in the same family.
Jeez.
If they were not lucky, brother or sister would get back on the train without them and go many miles further down the track. It was not uncommon for brothers and sisters to lose track of each other completely.
That is
So sad when it's literally
So
all you
sad.
have.
The
it
other
is so upsetting.
The other nickname for these trains too was baby trains. So they had very, very young kids on here.
Oh my God.
So awful. So getting into this segment, it opens with a reenactment of two brothers, Algie and Johnny, getting on the train and then being adopted, but they got adopted into two separate families. And so then we see Algie, who was adopted by a man whose last name was Braley. So Algie Braley is on UM as a talking head as an older man. He talks about how Algie and Johnny, he was separated from his brother, and eventually they were reunited as adults, thankfully. But Johnny, his brother, had a really terrible life in the family that adopted him. Algie had a better life, but yeah, Johnny's was not good.
I just can't imagine like how scary and the heartbreak, like having your sibling ripped away from you.
So
Oh my God.
awful.
It's awful. Like even talking about it like gets me like
Yeah.
super
It's really
Like when you've already had the worst
so
life.
much trauma.
Yeah.
And then you're taken away from your sibling and then you're adopted by a really shitty family.
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, so Johnny is the one who had the bad childhood, or like they all did, but the bad family. And he doesn't talk on this episode, and I
Yeah.
thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
So that's basically how they introduce it. And when we first were like screening this to just pick segments or whatever, we're like, oh, it's just about one family's story. But
Yeah.
no, there's many in here. So that's kind of just how they open the segment. And then UM tells us the story of two more orphan train passengers and the siblings they're looking for, because this is a lost love segment. So the first is Sylvia K. Mick Wemhoff. She was adopted at 3 and is 70 at the time of this UM recording. And she doesn't know what she is looking for. She doesn't know if she's looking for a brother or a sister.
That's insane.
3.
I know.
3. That's our kids.
That's our kids. I know.
She was born in 1918 in Brooklyn, New York, and orphaned by 1921, so when she was 3. Sylvia was one of many orphan train riders who were pre-selected by families. So this pre-selection process meant that they had numbers assigned to them, and then the families in the cities that they were going to also had that number, and they had to match them. The numbers were often sewn into their clothes.
That's so weird too in the reenactment. It's just kind of
very
like
weird.
and
And
it's
then
like bingo or something.
Yes.
They're like, oh look, I guess you're out.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's so
It's weird.
bizarre.
So strange.
Like the way that like children were treated.
Yep.
For most of history.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is just as like kind of a commodity.
We still deep down have very inherent feelings that children are not humans yet.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah. So in 1921, Sylvia was sent on the orphan train to Columbus, Nebraska. She was adopted by the John Mick family, who had a small farm in Lindsay, Nebraska. And a male orphan train rider was also adopted by the family. So they grew up together, and when Sylvia was 17, she began asking her adoptive parents about her birth parents. Years after that, she was able to locate her birth certificate, which stated that her birth name was Stephanie Volk with a W, and that her mother, Pauline Vitovich, an immigrant from Austria, had already had another child when she died.
Right. So it just was like a 1, right? Indicating
Yes.
a sibling, but nothing else.
But no like male, female, nothing like that. And
Yeah.
like Sylvia did not remember having a sibling, and obviously one wasn't on the train with her. So she learned that her birth parents were deceased, but she already knew that. That doesn't make sense. Maybe cut that
That's kind
out.
of what it means to be an orphan.
That's funny.
Well, I mean, she could have been abandoned. Like, maybe she didn't know.
that's true. Yeah, maybe
Like, 'cause
they
they
weren't
said that
all-
children were abandoned for a myriad of reasons.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, people were giving
Right.
kids away because they were having babies out of wedlock. Let's be honest. It
Yeah.
didn't take a lot for someone to
True.
dump a kid back then.
Yeah. So she truly, yeah, that's true. Maybe she could have, maybe
even-
it wasn't totally sure.
Or
Yeah.
even because they themselves were homeless. And
Exactly.
They were just like,
There's
Right.
a lot of reasons why. So, like,
Like,
they
she-
didn't necessarily have to be deceased.
But they
Right.
probably told a lot of them that their
They
parents were.
Of course.
Like
Yeah.
Son of
another.
Sam.
Exactly.
Yes.
I was going to say like another segment we've had.
Like 3 segments we've had.
Yeah. So she learned for sure that her parents were deceased. This segment, or this part of the segment,
Yeah.
ends and says she's now looking for her long lost older sibling along with any other siblings she may have. So the update, we get to see this update on here. It's very adorable.
so cute.
It's so cute.
Those noses.
Oh my god! Sorry. I said the same thing and I have it highlighted in yellow. They are literally, it reminds me of you and I know.
I was thinking that too.
Literally
but even
the
more
same.
like exactly the
It's,
same.
yeah, exactly. It's exact. We will post, I've already got the screenshot
Yeah.
of their profiles of their noses because they're the same. So Sylvia's brother, 72-year-old Joseph Volk, so he was only 2 years older than her. Mm-hmm. So she was probably 1 when they were maybe together a little bit before her parents died. He was found living in New York. His stepdaughter was watching the broadcast and realized that his mother's name was the same as Sylvia's mother's.
What are the chances?
Like, thank God
I
a
know.
younger family member was watching.
Yeah.
And saw that small
they
detail on the
didn't
screen.
even know the gender. I
Yeah.
mean, it's
Yeah,
amazing.
all it was
Yeah.
Volk.
It's so
That's it.
wonderful.
And so a few weeks after the broadcast, they were reunited at Joseph's home. So this is one where they did go back and refilm it and put it in
Right.
there.
Yeah.
Like
Their
a couple
reunion.
others that we've had. Yeah.
Yeah.
So sadly, both siblings did pass away. Of course, they're older
I
now.
mean, they were old on the UN segment.
But it's just so nice for their whole family that
Yeah.
they knew that they got to meet each other.
Yeah.
And that there probably aren't any other siblings out there. It's probably just the two of them. But you get to watch them reunited at Joseph's home.
It's
And
so
Sylvia
sweet.
is just the sweetest. She's like, it's your sister. And they look at pictures that the few pictures that they do have. And
Yeah, but there's just like a moment where they kind of like embrace each other's arms, and the profiles are just exactly the same. They look
exact.
exactly the same. It's so
seriously, the
cute.
noses especially.
Yes.
So that one was a very happy one. It's so cute. I would recommend watching it for sure. They're both delightful people. The next Orphan Train situation is Francis Murphy. And Francis Murphy's is a little bit more sad. So, I mean, they're all very sad, but he was 11 when he rode the Orphan Train in 1928. He was forced to leave his impoverished mother and infant sister, Margaret, behind. This is the saddest part to me. For him, the trip seemed exciting because his life was so terrible.
And he said he thought of like the Wild West.
Yeah. And because his mom, I guess, like wasn't around or wasn't available a lot for them anyway. And so he wasn't even very sad about leaving.
So he was
her.
like, a better place. I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah, he's like,
have a
how
better life.
it has to be better.
Yeah.
yeah. Because he's turning into like a young man and, he's not a little kid. I mean, he is, but for that day
that
and age,
time.
not
In
really.
relation to the others.
So it's also sad because at each stop, more children would get off and be adopted, and he kept getting left behind and no one would pick him. Sadly, he was never, ever adopted. He went from family to family, but his life did get better. He was able to get married and he became a high school teacher. and had 5 children and 6 grandchildren. But he still had never found Margaret, his little sister. That's where that one ends. And then the update on is again really sad. Francis developed heart disease in 1987 and then passed away immediately after his interview was filmed in 1988.
Oh, yeah.
That was I think that's when I started crying. I think I had reached my limit, my threshold.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So then in the update, they film his wife, Christine, and she says, we're still looking for Margaret. He looked forward to this interview with Unsolved Mysteries so much, and all he's ever wanted to do is to find her. If anyone knows her, we still want to meet her, and even though he's gone. So they give the information that they know Margaret was either born in Yonkers or New York City and may have been adopted too. She was born in either 1926 or 27 and would now, so at the time of the episode airing, be around 92 years old. So it's pretty old if she's still alive, if she were still alive at that point.
And this is all assuming too that they still have the same name.
I mean, yeah, there's so many things that have to work out in order for
some of
this
these
to
kids
work.
may not have ever known their real names.
Yeah.
So, and then they do give both their mother's name was Hilda Harding Murphy. So they gave 3 names, and I was like, oh, good, I'll be able to look for that. Their grandparents were John and Elizabeth Harding of Nova Scotia, and Francis's father was Martin Murphy. They didn't know for sure if Margaret had the same dad, or maybe they knew she didn't. Okay. So I looked up every one of these names. I could not pinpoint anyone that was for sure Francis, Margaret, or anyone related to them.
It's really hard when people are that old.
It's
because
so
you have to
hard.
think about, for people of that age, we would need to go to a town hall records and go through paper files.
Yeah,
because
we don't have
small towns don't
digital
digitize
files on anything.
They don't digitize that kind of stuff.
And I even thought, oh, well, the 3 names, Hilda Harding Murphy, that will be easier. Maybe I can find something. I couldn't find anything.
Yeah.
So there's not much of an update on Francis Murphy's, but I did find a few books on the history of the Orphan Train. I had requested one from our library, and it said it was on the shelves at Holgate, and then I went to get it, and they couldn't find it for me. That one's called We Rode the Orphan Train by Andrea Warren, and that's one that I was interested in reading because it features Algie and Johnny in it, the first brothers that I talked about. I'll just close out with how D. Bruce Ayler ended the piece he wrote that I read from before for the National Orphan Train Museum. So he says, the Orphan Train movement was the beginning of children's rights. So like we were just saying, they were treated like garbage, basically like cattle. From the trains came the children's protection laws, school lunches, medical treatments, and the beginnings of the welfare system. So like it started there, and it's a terrible thing, but there was literally nothing before that. So he says, today's system tries to keep the children with their birth parents. If that is not possible, local foster parents are provided. Where possible, brothers and sisters are kept together. There is now a safety net to help protect the children. Would the writers prefer to go back to the old system? No, they realize that the new system is not perfect, that it needs fixing, but it is better than breaking up families.
Of course.
I liked this paragraph. The orphan trains were needed at the time they happened. They were not the best answer, but they were the first attempts at finding a practical system. Yeah. Many children that would have died lived to have children and grandchildren. It has been calculated that over 2 million descendants have come from these orphan train children.
Wow, that's
crazy.
amazing.
The trains gave the children a fighting chance to actually grow up.
Yeah.
And so if you think you might have a family member who rode the orphan train, there are a lot of organizations that will help you track that. One place I would start is the National Orphan Train Research Center, which we'll post the website for. But yeah, it's so heartbreaking. I'm ashamed that I didn't know anything about it, and also like disappointed that schools aren't talking about it of. It just seems like a huge part of history, and a lot of the children on the trains thought, I'm on the only orphan train. Like they also didn't know this was just a thing that they were doing with thousands and thousands of kids.
It's crazy. I remember growing up in New York outside, the Children's Aid Society was still around. There was like a commercial that would play with this really catchy jingle. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, is it the same? And it's the same one.
Yeah.
So it's still around as far as I know. It was for helping kids in the inner city out. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's Lost Love's Orphan Train.
That was really good, girl.
Nice job.
I want to read that book for sure.
Yeah, there were a few that looked really good.
Oh, I bet it's
I bet it's so sad.
They also, one last thing, they also have reunions, or they did. Like
that's really
now, a lot of the
sweet.
people are no longer with us, but yeah, they had reunions. Algie and Johnny went to one, so like they can get together with other people who rode on the train,
Who like have the same experience.
Yes,
Nice.
I love that.
Yeah.
Good work, Mama.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So, segment 3, like we were saying earlier, is about Dorothy Allison, the psychic, but within that segment, there are a couple different stories that she works on. So, we're going to talk a little bit about Dorothy Allison, and then we're going to go through the segments that she assisted with. Dorothy Allen was a self-proclaimed... Shit. Okay. So...
I believe it 100%.
Yeah, this is not deep. I can tell you exactly how this works. Okay, so today we're here to talk about Dorothy Allison, the psychic. She was born in 1924 and died at the age of 74 in 1999. She always told people she would never make it to 75, and she didn't. So I guess she showed us. Dorothy Allison and I have some things in common. We were both born and raised in the same city, and she died at a hospital that I briefly lived a few blocks away from.
Whoa.
Yeah, right? Pretty crazy.
You killed her.
I did.
With your hatred.
Yeah. In 1999, I was like, this is it. You didn't want to live to 75? I got you.
Got you, girl.
I got you, honey.
Who's the psychic now?
You knew this was coming. So Dorothy's wiki is pretty short because Wikipedia relies on facts, and it's hard to fact check a self-proclaimed psychic. So I found some newspaper articles.
The snark is real. The snark is real.
Yep.
The snark is real. The snark is real.
You know it, girl. You know it. But I'm not gonna burden you guys with my opinion. Unsolved Mysteries gives us Dorothy's tale. She predicted that her dad would die
When she was young.
when she was young, yes. And then he did. And then ever since then, she's seen images that help her solve crimes and maybe predict the future. Unclear. I don't know. Her main claim to fame was helping the Nutley police solve, in quotations, the case of the missing boy, Michael Kirksix. Kirksix, thank you. They said that the information that she provided was very, very accurate, right on the money. And this guy, I think he's in the segment, Police Chief Robert DeLitta of the Nutley Police Department, he became kind of like her biggest proponent. So he started telling all these other police departments to use her. Like he really believed in what she was doing.
Okay. Maybe that's the guy in my segment.
I think it
They do
is.
not name him
Oh,
the
that's
entire time, even when
very-
he's giving his interviews.
Wow, that's
And
really
the subtitles
strange.
just say man.
Mine's different. Mine is Sal Lubertazzi.
Oh, the guy that was giving the interviews?
And they give his name.
Weird.
Wow.
He's a detective, yeah.
That's
Okay.
interesting. So maybe it was the detective working on the case, and then this guy was the police chief, and he really liked her. I don't know.
Okay. Weird.
She helped with a bunch of cases. She helped with the Patty Hearst kidnapping, Son of Sam killings, murders of the children in Atlanta.
Oh, wow. I didn't. Wow.
Well, I'm saying help. She worked on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
So
I know. It doesn't mean she solved it.
Yeah.
you know, I mean, Patty Hearst's dad was very impressed with her. She didn't actually provide any information, but he thought that she was a little spitfire. Yeah, he did. He was like, I mean, she didn't give me any information, but like, work with her.
She's
She's
cool
great.
to hang out with.
Yeah, he was like, she's awesome. So let's talk about the first
So
case
the
that she was on.
first one they talk about is the case of Michael Kirksix. And we were just discussing before we recorded that this segment, for some reason, was from like one of the first 2 episodes of UM. So I don't know why it was edited in so much later, because it was in the 1988 episode. This segment starts with Stack saying that there are many affidavits from police departments around the country attesting to Dorothy Allison's psychic powers.
He rubs those grubbies on those affidavits.
He does. You're right.
Picks
He
them up
loves
from the desk
He needs a
and-
prop sometimes.
He does.
Yeah, if it's not him like walking and slowly putting his hands into his pockets, then he has a prop.
He has something to show us.
Yes. Stack says that, of course, the use of psychics in police work is always controversial, duh, and then frequently they're inaccurate, duh, but that there are a few who seem to have a special gift. The ability to predict details still locked in the future, and ability within itself is an unsolved mystery. Basically, this segment is different because it's not unsolved. There's no unexplained aspect to it.
Yeah.
A freak accident happened, and the reason it's on UM is because of Dorothy Allison helping with it. So in Nutley, New Jersey, which is where Dorothy Allison lived, I believe, December 3rd, 1967, 5-year-old Michael Kirksix and his older brother, who I couldn't even find the name of, but he was only 7. They go out to play at around 8:15 a.m. They were playing near the Third River, which was also not even mentioned on UM, like what river it was.
I think I know where that is.
Okay.
It's in like a big park called Branch Brook Park.
Yeah, it looked like a park on the reenactment.
yeah.
So they're just playing next to the river. Somehow Michael loses his footing and falls in. The river was extra high because of the snow melt. It basically just rushed him away right away.
His poor brother.
His brother tried to help him, but he was only 7.
Yeah, what was he going to do?
So it said he tried to grab for him and couldn't reach him, and the river just swept him away.
I hate to say this, but thank God that he also didn't get swept away. That's often people die when they try to save drowning victims.
Totally. That's so true.
I mean, it's so sad, but...
Yeah. So the only part of this case that truly was a mystery was just trying to find Michael's body. So 2 hours before Michael's accident at 5:56 a.m., Dorothy Allison awakes from a terrible nightmare. In the lucid dream, she saw a little boy inside of a pipe. She said in the dream his hands were clasped together and very black, which she didn't understand because she was seeing a vision of him and he was super white, and then his hands were black. She says she saw a tremendous illumination of light, almost as though he had been in, it seemed like, a vacuum. Dorothy seems very sad as she describes this nightmare. Like, she really seems like... sad to be telling this. And what I found interesting about Dorothy was just the way she told her stories, because I don't know if you guys have seen any other psychics speak. Like, have you guys seen the Psychic Twins?
No.
Oh,
Ew. That
so
scares
I think
me.
they've been on TV shows as well, but they've also done a lot of stuff on YouTube. They have their own YouTube channel, but they talk in this very specific way where they're just really validating you and leading you to admit that the things they're saying are totally true about your life. So this wasn't, she was different. She wasn't drawing things out of people. She was just I'm going to tell you this story in my New Jersey accent, and I'm just going to tell you how it is, So the police search for Michael for weeks, but can't locate his body anywhere. A month later, Dorothy went to the police to insist that someone listen to her story. I read somewhere that the nightmare just wouldn't leave her, so I don't know if that means it was recurring or if she just couldn't stop thinking about it, but she went to the police about it. What struck the police as they listened to Dorothy describe her dream was that she very accurately described the clothes Michael was wearing when he was lost in the river. There had only been one small article in the paper about Michael, and there was no photo of him in the article, so it was pretty weird because that information was not released to the public. Dorothy explains the boy she saw in her dream was wearing a green snowsuit, under that a striped polo shirt, under that an undershirt with a metal pin to it. She also said she saw that his shoes were on the wrong feet. The police officer, who on what I watched was never named, but she later referred to him as Don, explains that they really thought it could just be a hoax, so he wasn't putting too much weight behind it until he heard her very accurately describe what he was wearing. He knew Michael and his family, so once he heard her describe exactly what he looked like, he said, "She got me. She just got me." He then became interested to see if there was maybe more to Dorothy's dream that she couldn't remember and that maybe more questioning would help bring it out. He decided that they were going to work with her. Dorothy tells Dawn that she kept seeing the numbers 120 and 8. She didn't know what either of those numbers meant, but she just kept saying that she would see them. She also kept saying that his body would be found behind a school. Another thing she mentioned was a parking lot and an ITT factory, lumber, and gold lettering on a window. So the police thought that maybe 120 was an address. In the area they were searching initially, there was no address of 120. They then moved on to the idea that maybe it meant January 20th, but that day came and went with no significance. Dorothy kept saying she was seeing 120, and the police began to get frustrated with making no sense of it. Dorothy eventually told them that Michael would be found on February 7th. So I don't know when this occurs to her, but she just tells them. They cut to Dawn saying that the day the boy was found, it was 1:20 in the afternoon of February 7th that I was told the baby was found. So Michael had been found in nearby Clinton, New Jersey, inside of a drainage pipe. The area that Michael was found actually lined up with many of Dorothy's clues. The number 8, near the bank of the river where Michael was found, there was an elementary school that was called PS 8. Across the street from the school, there was a lumber yard. Next door is an office building with gold letters on the window. Directly across the river is a local ITT factory with a parking lot. When Michael was found, he was wearing the exact same clothes Dorothy described. His little galoshes were on the correct feet, but the undershoes inside of them were in fact on the wrong feet. Dawn says that they backtracked and everything she said fit together like a puzzle. Dawn even said, I started to kick myself for not knowing what she was trying to say. But it's like,
How would he?
how could he? I mean, you have to work backwards with that. Like, Dorothy has been aware of her psychic gift ever since at 14 she dreamed her father would die, and he did the very next weekend. Dorothy explains she had several visions and cases she attempted to help with that led nowhere and presented her no clues until this one. Since Michael's case, she's helped work on several homicides, mostly cases of children. She also goes on to explain that she wonders why her. She says it's hard on her emotionally and physically. It has not been a happy thing for me at all. So I read somewhere else too that she worked on many cases for a while and then eventually was like, I can't do this anymore, and only took cases
break.
of children.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
after a little break, because she just like couldn't bear the emotional weight of it all. The thing about this case is that doesn't actually report on how Dorothy's information helped find Michael's body. It just reports on that the things she said lined up with when he was found.
Yeah.
So that to me, I was like, well, how did she actually help find him? Like, yes, she drew all these weird coincidences or similarities, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So, and there is no update on this one at all. This was in the 60s, and there's even any newspaper articles I found were just about Dorothy Allison, and he was like a paragraph in the article. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I will say my segment now, but you do hear like the pattern or maybe the game or tactics that psychics use to like make educated guesses that are obvious.
yes. With this one, I think the clothing
Some of
part
them
was the
were
weirdest
very,
to me.
like the metal. Well, I guess did they say if there was a metal pin in the undershirt?
Yeah, he had something that was pinned on there. I don't know what
And
it
like
was
it's
exactly, but-
snowing there, so he's probably wearing a snowsuit. Like he's 5, so his shoes probably are on the wrong feet if he got himself ready. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, mine is the case of John DeMars, who Dorothy Allison also worked on the case, but it's sort of a similar situation. Did she really help solve it, or did she just say a bunch of things and then like they lined up? So John DeMars was a 30-year-old New York banker who on December 20th, 1974, left his Manhattan office to ride the train home to New Jersey, and he was not seen again. So he got on the train and he never got off. He was happily married with 2 young children, and he would always call his wife if he was going to be even 10 minutes late. So it was very unusual for him to not be to get off at his stop at Netley, New Jersey. At first, police thought maybe he had embezzled money since he was a banker and had run off, or that he'd run off with a lover. Kind of like my...
Kind of like everybody.
kind of like every white man segment we ever have. But in this case, that did not happen. And both of those theories were like very quickly discounted. When DeMars had been missing 24 hours, Detective Sal Lubertazzi decided to call Dorothy Allison and ask for help. So maybe he had heard from Dawn or whoever it was that really liked working with her.
She worked in Jersey a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of her cases were Jersey.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just going to put this in of him and her going back and forth about how they kind of talked about the case.
Our first thoughts were maybe he embezzled money. We didn't find anything wrong with the bank. Maybe he ran away with another girl. We found out that that wasn't true. We just couldn't find this fellow, so I went to see Dorothy. I said, Dorothy, I'm looking for a male adult that's been missing for more than 24 hours. Her first words to me was, he's drowned.
Well, I said, he fell off the train. He said, how could he fall off the train in the water? I says, no. I said, you received misinformation. He fell off the train. He's in water.
So I said, well, can you give me any other clues as to where I would find him?
I said, I see a row of tires, a little park. The children get down a hill on their sleds. I see a fire engine the children play on. And I see this man in this water here.
Then she told me that she sees a bow and arrow. Now, where do you find a bow and arrow? I thought she was crazy.
That's why he thought she was crazy.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Just that.
Yeah. And then that sound that you just heard was an arrow hitting a target because guess what? She was right. She predicted a bow and arrow and she was right. You see a arrow hitting a target as Stack tells us that 2 months after DeMars' disappearance, a father and teenage son were target practicing with their bow and arrow near the Passaic River. You know where that is, Alison?
I do.
In New Jersey on a bluff. What a weird thing to do. One of the arrows missed the target and landed a few feet from John's body in the water. So it went like over the bluff and into the water. I'm doing lots of hand movements that no one can see. And then they don't show a body, but it's like it looks like it's meant to be a bloated body in the water. It makes sense that no one would have like seen it. It's kind of a hidden area.
Yeah, nobody's by the Passaic River.
Yeah.
It's disgusting. When she was like, I see water with tires. Please, honey.
So one of the things that Dorothy had kept saying about this case was that she kept seeing the numbers 222. John had been found on February 22nd. And then also there was a nearby park where tires had been arranged to make a sled run, which she also said she saw lots of tires. But also that could just be all over the place.
Just a river in Jersey.
This is what's craziest to me.
Yeah, this is the craziest part of the story. Forget about Dorothy Allison.
And the Passaic River, like, it's not a raging river.
No.
Police determined that John had fallen asleep on the train ride home. Remember, this is 1979. So the conductor made an unscheduled stop on the Passaic River Bridge, this rickety old horrible bridge, right on the bridge.
Probably
and
just going to stop right here.
Opened
Just right
the
there.
back door to let another passenger off the back of the train. Not a regular stop. Why would you ever do that? And then John, who was still half asleep and apparently in a drug coma.
Yeah, I mean,
He wasn't, but that's the only way that this makes sense to me. Thought that this was his stop and walked off the train and fell off the bridge and drowned in a completely calm river.
no.
How?
Like, it would have had to have been so dark.
And it wasn't. I mean,
It was winter in Jersey, the sunset's like 5:30.
That's
And
true.
he's coming home from work, so it could
Yeah,
have been
it
dark.
probably was dark.
But still,
how many
you think
times
you'd hear the sounds?
Yeah, like how many times have people
like-
fallen asleep on the subway and like you're half asleep, but you don't just wake up and walk out the door.
Yeah, it's so strange.
And if you fall in a river, can he not swim?
I mean, he could have hit his head. I don't know
Yeah,
how far the
that's
drop
true.
is.
Well, so like this doesn't seem very likely to me. I tried to dig a little further, and I thought for sure there would be other people online saying they didn't believe this explanation. There has to be something else, but it seems like everyone just accepts this.
That
So
he just fell off
Yep.
the train into the river.
I mean, talk about a freak accident. It's not funny,
it's
but it's like
awful.
It's crazy.
it's so bizarre.
So I just tried to find like a few articles, and this is what a few of them said about the autopsy, and didn't really even cover the autopsy. So the Hudson County Medical Examiner's Office found evidence of a superficial head wound and 4 broken ribs on the body, but a spokesman said the injuries could have been suffered in the estimated time of 2 months that the body was like being floated around.
Bashed around. Yeah.
And a superficial head wound that means like it wouldn't kill you.
It wouldn't kill you, but it
Right.
could knock you unconscious and then
yeah.
you could drown.
You could be concussed.
So the cause of the death remained undetermined and further toxicological tests were ordered. I couldn't find any toxicology reports. But yeah, later on, the Hudson County authorities ruled the death of John DeMars an accidental drowning.
That's crazy.
Yep.
So really with that one, Dorothy Allison's part was just saying that he was in water
Water
and tires.
and tires and the 222
And the bow and arrow.
and the
Oh,
bow
yeah,
and arrow.
sorry. Okay.
I mean, that is kind of weird.
Yeah.
And the water, I just like when she's like, "I know you got misinformation. He's in water."
I know.
So she was really, really snarky. She
Yeah.
gave it as good as she got. I love her personality, and I don't think that she didn't think that she was psych. I don't think that she
Right.
was hustling anybody.
Right.
There are certain things that you can do that give you a much higher probability of being helpful as a psychic,
Right,
and that's
right.
exactly what she was
Because-
doing. I'm not saying she's a bad person or that I dislike her.
Right.
And I know that she wanted to help.
Yeah.
And I
it's
did
fine.
read that she did not accept money from anyone.
She didn't.
Parents would put her her up, they would like get her a hotel.
Yeah.
And if they couldn't afford that, she would stay with a policeman at his house.
Yeah, she never took money.
So
no, and that's what
she
like I
didn't
don't
have a weird motive.
My
Like,
issue with her isn't my issue isn't with her. My issue is with the tactics that psychics use, whether or not they're aware of it.
Yeah.
I don't want to bash somebody who people believe in. You know, it's no
Yeah.
fun being a skeptic. I don't
Yeah.
like get off on this. It's like a party pooper. Like nobody likes people that are like, oh, this is how the fucking magic trick works. I don't like being that person.
Yeah.
But when I was doing research on her, she didn't actually really help find Michael. He was found in the river when somebody was looking for a place to bury their cat. So I don't know how much like I can get into it or not, but
that's
like
what I'm saying too.
what you were describing, the tactics used, it's just called retrofitting. Basically, you overload with information, and then the small things that do match, people
Something-
make work match, and it's just
people-
human nature.
And they put, well, at least the ones I've seen, like the psychic twins, put so much meaning behind it. Like
It makes you give it meaning. Just
Exactly.
like horoscopes or
Of
anything
course,
like that.
you know, and
well,
like,
and
it's
they're,
human nature.
they're also there are people who are incredibly in tune to other people. So they're also watching their body language experts and their facial
Totally.
change experts.
Yeah.
And so they're watching for any hint of even like energy in the room
Yeah.
of like someone being like, oh, wow, she was right. And then they
Yep.
Yeah.
And they run with it.
lock onto
Exactly.
that.
And,
It's
like, there's
an
nothing
interesting
wrong-
art form. It's very
And
smart.
I don't think that they're like, if you're not, I mean,
have to
I
be
think
smart.
I think like at the best they are good intentioned, and at the worst they're predatory, because psychics, I mean,
Absolutely.
if you're a parent and you're missing a child and a psychic's charging you money, that person's a fucking garbage person.
And
Sorry.
good on UM
Yeah.
for featuring one that's not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly. I found an article where a detective, she came in to help this detective in Spokane, Washington, and she knew all this information that had taken the detective months to find out, and he was really excited. And then he found out that his captain had given her the file ahead of time.
Right.
And then two other officers accused her of basically going to them and asking them to lie and say that she helped on the case when she actually didn't. Yeah. I just found a lot of stuff. Again, I don't think that she was a bad person. I think she wanted to help. That's fine. But the only time it isn't fine is when detectives really start focusing on something that these people are saying and it doesn't go anywhere. And we all know that when someone's missing, time is the most important thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, be a psychic, work with a psychic. That's totally fine until it becomes a detriment to actually solving the case.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally.
Who knows? When the police accused her of going to them and asking, she was like, they're liars. She fought with James Randi, who was a magician. Most of his career was trying to expose people who pretended to be like mentalists and psychics. They would fight in the newspapers back and forth. She'd be like, tell him to shut his mouth. I mean, she's great. I love
Yeah.
her. I don't want it to come across like I don't like this person.
I know where you're coming from, girl.
Okay, you might think we're done, but we're not.
We're not
done.
done. So next is the case of Susan Jacobson. We open with Susan's mother, Ellen. And Ellen, Staten Island Queen. Heavy accent. I'm not going to do it because I'll butcher it, but she's just very straightforward. She says, how can Dorothy do these things? I don't understand psychics. I don't know how Dorothy's mind works. All I know is if Dorothy told me, Ellen, go outside and cross the street, I would go out and cross the street because I don't know what she's seeing for me. So this lady is like hook, line, and sinker right off the bat. Ellen and her husband, Bill, met Dorothy after their daughter, Susan, disappeared from home in 1976. On May 5th, 14-year-old Susan left her home in Staten Island to go to a job interview at a local ice cream parlor. When Susan wasn't home by dinner, her parents contacted the police. Bill says that police were basically like, she's 14, she had a boyfriend, so she ran away. And he says point blank, that was it. Like literally they just turned him back around and were like, bye. So the police said they don't have the manpower to look for all 14-year-old girls who run away.
You should.
Yeah.
That
She
should be
didn't run away.
Top priority.
It's
Yeah.
awful. We know
She's a
so many
14-year-old
stories
child.
like this from that time.
Yeah.
Where parents knew their children were missing.
Yeah, man.
They knew their children would not just run away, and the police would just not give any attention to these cases.
And also,
And she was probably wearing a short skirt.
even,
Well, she had a boyfriend. So
Ooh.
Yeah.
even if a kid does run away,
You still go
you
look
should
for
still go
them.
look for
Yes.
them. Like, why is
Also
that
that.
still an out?
also her family is still terrified of like what could have happened to her.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the Jacobsons had heard of Dorothy Allison, and they reached out to her for help. Dorothy and her husband came out to Staten Island right away. Dorothy had heard nothing about the case, which
Who knows?
who knows? And she had never met the Jacobsons before. Ellen, the mother, says basically She didn't expect to meet someone so normal. She envisioned a gypsy woman, someone who would lay out a deck of cards, which I swear she said playing cards when she said it, or read her hand, which she meant read her palm. But Dorothy was just this normal lady who asked her, "Where's the coffee?" She immediately asked Ellen what the number 2562 means to her. She said she could turn it into February 5th, 1962, which was Susan's birthday. Which, I'm sorry, she definitely could have known that before she went over there. 2562.
Yeah.
She then asked her if the number 408 meant anything to her. Ellen was like, no, not really. Dorothy says, well, maybe it's 405. And Ellen says that that's the time that Susan was born.
Oh.
I wonder if she looked up this girl's birth certificate.
She could
And
have.
she made a
That's what I'm-
mistake saying 408, and then she's like, oh, wait, it was 405.
Or she did that on purpose to be like, oh, maybe I'm actually
Oh,
sensing
hold on
405.
a second. Yeah.
Yikes.
But then this one, Dorothy says, what's Mar? Ellen's like, excuse me? She's like, Mar, M-A-R. Dorothy asks if they can go to the police department. She had a vision that Susan was strangled by her boyfriend and had a vision of a large M-A-R written in red letters. So very specific all of a sudden. Dorothy goes to the police and explains the story to the police, but to no avail. The police in Staten Island were not the police in Nutley, New Jersey. And they were like, fuck off, lady. I'm not judging. I am judging that these poor parents get the police to give attention to their missing daughter's case.
Yeah, for sure.
So Bill takes it upon himself to start investigating Dorothy's clues. Bless his heart. He's literally like, this is the only thing I have to find my daughter.
Being that, yeah.
I can't.
So he starts looking into all the clues Dorothy had come up with. An abandoned car, the letters M-A-R, the smell of oil, 2 sets of dual church steeples, dual smokestacks, swamps, and marshes. Bill explains that they had just began searching all of Staten Island, but that the confusing part of searching this way is that you don't know anything about distance and time, past, present, and future. You know, she's just giving these little tidbits of like, I saw this thing, and it's like, when, where, you know? Bill says eventually they go to a place called Downback. You know where that is? Mm-hmm. There's an abandoned World War I shipyard there. They found a rock that had been painted with the letters M-A-R in red paint. And they show this in the reenactment. I don't know if it's the same actual spot. In the same reenactment, they also show him walking by an abandoned car. As soon as Bill found M-A-R on the rock, he called Dorothy to get her over to the area. As soon as she saw the rock, she was like, yep, this is it. This is where your daughter is. Now we need the cops. We need the dogs. We need the bloodhounds. We need to drag through the swamps and the marshes. But Bill said, sadly, we had none of that. The police would not come out. They searched as much as they could on their own, but they never found Susan. 22 months later, 3 boys are out muskrat hunting in the exact area Bill had been searching. 100 yards from the M-A-R rock, they found the remains of Susan Jacobson concealed in 2 oil drums. And I read that they looked down and thought it was like dog bones, and then they looked like further in and saw clothes, and that's when they were like, oh God. Bill says at that spot where she was found, you could see the dual church steeples, the smokestacks, the abandoned car, the rock with M-A-R, all from like that point where she was found. Obviously, the smell of oil premonition linked to the fact that Susan was found inside of oil drums. Dorothy also said that Susan was in water but had not drowned. So Susan's autopsy did, in fact, reveal she'd been strangled, then dumped in the water-filled hole. Susan's boyfriend, Dempsey Hawkins, was arrested, tried, and convicted of her murder. Ellen says, Dorothy knew that my daughter was murdered. She retells that Dorothy identified 9 months after Susan's disappearance who had committed the murder, how she was murdered, and where she was, and everything she said came true, which is, I will say, weird.
Yeah. Especially the M-A-R.
That's the only thing that I think is
The
weird.
M-A-R is weird, but she also knew that she was strangled by her boyfriend.
Yeah.
I know, but like, run the numbers. Most people are killed by their boyfriends, and most men strangle or bludgeon their partners.
Yeah.
True. That is true.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, not for nothing, but he was an African-American guy in Staten Island in the 80s. So,
Yes.
like, they were already looking at him.
And I'm going to go into that. So that was the end of the UM segment. We're going to go now into the history of Susan and Dempsey a little bit. The reason I even have this information is because of letters that Dempsey wrote in prison at the age of 51. The letter came out in 2011, and Dempsey had written about a specific summer 36 years prior when he began his relationship with Susan. So I'm not sure of the context of like who the letter was for or why it was mailed from the prison.
That's crazy.
And he fancies himself a writer. So it is written in the style of like a novel. It's like poetic. He like uses a ton of big words. He's like painting this beautiful picture and story. It's really strange.
Wow.
So during the summer of 75, Dempsey was 15 and Susan was 13. He and Susan were basically just kids that were in the same neighborhood. So they ran around the same circles and knew of each other. And it seems like he had a crush on her for a while. Like he was kind of like watching her for a while. One day they started a relationship after Dempsey accidentally got hit in the face by the backswing of Susan's baseball bat in a neighborhood game. That day forward, they began a teenage romance. Susan was white and Dempsey was black. Of course, it was the 70s and there was some controversy over their relationship. Susan's parents were reportedly not thrilled with their courtship, warning the teens that, quote, they were leaving themselves wide open for criticism because of the race problem. Her mother, Ellen, said. However, nobody really stood in their way. Over the months, Susan and Dempsey began spending all their time outside of school together. He would regularly be over at her house hanging out with her family. So it's like they were like, be careful with this, but they weren't like discouraging it really. Mm-hmm. In January of 76, Susan got pregnant. She had an abortion, and her parents said she couldn't see Dempsey anymore. She told Dempsey about this, but they just began to be sneaky and see each other secretly because, of course, that's what teenagers do. Mm-hmm. In May, when Susan disappeared, of course, the police were not helping and Susan was not found. They asked Dempsey if he knew anything. He said he didn't, and he helped in the search. Dempsey admits in this same letter that he strangled Susan and hid her body in the barrels. In a phone interview he did from prison, he explained what happened. He says that he took Susan to the abandoned lot and that had lots of holes in the ground, like little bunkers and things. So they climbed down inside one. We were sitting side by side, he said. It was a warm day, and he had taken off his shirt, he said. With the arm of the shirt, I put it around her neck as if to kiss her, and I just started squeezing it. Her hands went up to the shirt, and I just looked away and just kept squeezing the shirt.
Jesus Christ.
Susan stopped moving. I picked up her body and put it in a barrel and put the barrel against a wall so it was concealed.
Why?
Oh my God.
Yeah, this is all like I'm piecing it together from several different New York Times articles that came out at different times.
Holy shit.
So Dempsey explained that after the abortion and Susan's parents demanding that they break up, he began to think about how he couldn't live without Susan and that he especially couldn't live with knowing that she was with another man. Okay. It was then that he planned to kill her.
Okay.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. So Susan's dad, Bill, later described that sometimes while they were out searching and everyone was being bitten by mosquitoes, animals, combing through the weeds, he would look up and Dempsey would just be standing around, like looking around, doing nothing. During other searches of the lot, Dempsey called out for her, "Susan, Susan." He would stoop and pick up something off the ground, like an old comb, and ask one of Susan's sisters, "Is this Susan's?" So he was just like...
For a while, Staten Island was collecting all of Manhattan's garbage. Mm-hmm. And so there's tons
just
of
junk
debris,
everywhere.
especially in that area that they were looking for her.
Yeah.
He probably picked up thousands of things and drove everybody crazy. Yeah.
This is a quote from Susan's sister Janice. "Every time we got close, he would come up with a story to take us to a different location. He would tell people maybe she went to Florida or Chicago." Dempsey told a cousin and a friend that he had strangled Susan. It's unknown if maybe they just didn't believe him because nobody went to the police about it. At some point between the searching and Susan's body being located, Dempsey had moved to Illinois to live with his father. Once Susan's body had been found by the boys, word of Dempsey's statements to his cousin got out, and this is what led to him ultimately being arrested in Illinois. What?
Okay, so all of these things happened before Dorothy Allison showed up, correct? Because that's who we're talking about. So the searching in the area.
Probably.
They suspected Dempsey. We were talking about, and Eliza was saying about body language and things like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Dorothy Allison would have to ask a couple questions to get the vibe off of the parents as to where they think she is and who they think did it.
Yeah, that's true. And they wouldn't have said that in the interview.
Because this is an incredible story. But as it relates to Dorothy Allison, it's kind of, okay, well, this is very illuminating.
And again, she saw these things, but none of them led to actually that's how they found her.
Yeah, of course you're going to say, if they think that if you're going to dump a body, you're most likely going to do it in this location. Is there going to be an abandoned car? Probably. Smokestacks? Obviously. You know, and that's why the MAR
That's
thing
true.
is the only thing that's
And
weird.
you can see those smokestacks for like a couple mile radius,
Yeah,
probably.
You know, maybe who knows like what that MAR rock is in relation to that area, but it could be
Yeah.
like a landmark. So she's thinking, okay, well, she's probably here.
It's somewhere. And if they had found her a mile from that, they would have still mentioned that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And again, I'm not being a dick. I'm trying to work through how this works in reality.
So Dempsey's finally arrested. He pleaded his innocence at a trial, but was convicted and sentenced to 22 years to life in prison. It was almost 20 years before he admitted to the murder in a letter to the Jacobson family. I'm terribly sorry for what I've done, and I have been for a long time, he wrote.
Oh, they're probably like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I hate him.
I hate him. I know.
I know. I found an article from 2011. Hawkins was 51 at the time. And had, of course, been a model inmate.
Of course.
He'd been considered for parole 7 times since he was first eligible in 2000 and had been denied each time. He asked to be transferred to his native England. He lived in England until he was like old enough to walk, basically. If paroled, the authorities would deport him there anyway. The state rejected his request. Susan's family meets with the parole board every time his case comes up and protests his release. The next meeting... This is from the article in 2011. The next meeting would be in March 2012. Mr. Jacobson had asked how long he wanted this to continue, knowing his daughter's killer could be ejected from the country with the stroke of a pen. He replied, forever. In August of 2016, there was a reverse for Hawkins. He was 57 at the time, and it was decided that he could be paroled on the condition that he be deported to England. He was somber during the interview at Woodburn Correctional Facility in November, thinking back on that day long ago. I never stop reflecting in one sense or another, Mr. Hawkins said. There's always things to remind me. It never leaves me. My shame of it is absolute. It's perpetual.
Great. Good.
It should be.
Remorse has been part and parcel with my being since I've been in here, he said. When I look back at my crime, I'm in disbelief. His mom was still living in Staten Island, and when she heard about all this, she said she would move back to England with him. But after a trip there over the summer, she changed her mind. She forgot how cold, dreary, and basically miserable it is over there in the country, he said. And he said, don't worry, there's always Skype.
Oh, my God.
In January 2017, he was finally deported to England, to London, and hooked up with a program called Prisoners Abroad, an agency that provides support for convicts deported to Britain.
What?
I'm
I'm sure the struggle isn't that real.
The
Like,
woman in charge of it didn't want to be named for some reason.
I can imagine why. It's a ridiculous program. The UK is pretty similar to us. It's not like you're getting deported to Beijing.
Yeah.
Weird.
The last article I found was from 2018, and it said that Hawkins, 58, had been approaching women on social networking site meetup.com.
Bye.
One woman who was contacted by Hawkins under the alias Dempsey Lewis.
Oh, a listener emailed us about this.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh.
Okay.
Just today.
What?
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes.
One woman who was contacted by Hawkins under the alias Dempsey Lewis claims he was terribly forward and did not mention his past conviction at all and gave his number immediately. She said, I thought it was an unusual name, and he said he lived in Cambridge, so I Googled him, and there was a reference to the murderer, Dempsey Hawkins. I compared their photographs, and it was obviously the same man. I was horrified. Can you imagine?
This is
being
crazy.
like, PSA ladies, always Google everyone.
Yeah, really.
So the woman called the police after finding out about his past. She said, I hope he's a contributing member of society, but I think it's important other females and males in this dating network know his face. Yes.
Yep.
What happens when he falls in love with someone else and decides he can't live without
Yeah.
them? Is he going
What the
to
fuck?
strangle them
Yeah.
too?
No, like you should have to list that on everything ever. Dempsey is now enjoying a new life in Cambridge and working at a Mexican restaurant in the city.
Good for him.
Oh my God. Alyssa
Fly,
T
little bird.
was on it. Alyssa T on
T.
Patreon.
I
So what did
know.
she send?
She sent us the article that you're probably looking
Okay,
at.
the Daily Mail one?
Yeah.
Yep.
She said you might want to use this in your research.
Yep.
It was the Mirror, but it's the same article.
Yeah.
I'm assuming.
That's
so
crazy.
funny.
So now he's just trying to find love again.
Oh, well, I hope he doesn't find it. It's one thing to be 16 and say, oh, I killed somebody in a fit of rage or, something where but I thought about this and I didn't want anyone else to have her. So I murdered her and didn't want to look at it.
That's so gross. That poor girl.
Yeah. And her poor family.
Yeah.
It's so sad.
Wow, that was really interesting.
Yeah. You never know. You
I
never know what
know.
kind of update you're going to get.
This episode is filled with you never knows. Okay, so
Last Dorothy Allison segment, then we never have to do it
Congratulations,
again.
everyone. I'm going to have a cookie about it.
Okay, the final segment relating to Dorothy Allison. In the episode, they sort of pose a challenge to Dorothy Allison to see if she can assist without being given any information ahead of time. So Sergeant Keith Wattenshade of the Maryland State Police contacted Dorothy and didn't tell her anything. She says immediately they should be looking for a janitor, that it was a kidnap abduction. The suspect has suicidal tendencies and something wrong with his feet. Okay. The numbers 1 and 7 are very important. Whether it's 71 or 17, Dorothy Allison doesn't know yet. The person wears glasses and sometimes a wig.
Leaving those options open.
She said it was a police officer, possibly in disguise, wearing a beard, and now he doesn't have a wig or hairpiece. Wattenshade's like, oh my God,
favorite.
I'm in plain clothes.
Yeah.
I wear a hairpiece, and I'm like, wow, you are fully on this if you're admitting on national television that you were rocking a toupee. Like, good on
I was
you.
amazed because it was actually a good toupee.
I was like, take
It
the
wasn't
power
bad.
back.
I wouldn't have known.
Yeah, it was very funny. He was like, I wear a toupee. It's like, all
It's
right.
like, she knew it. She knew it was me.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
What does he say? She was picking up on me, or he uses something picking up on or something.
So a lot of times when psychics give information and it doesn't relate to the killer, the way that it's explained is that, basically like she was picking up on the vibes of somebody else.
He was in the vicinity.
Because he was in the vicinity of the crime.
Yeah.
Obviously. Oh, and he also he took a beard off a week ago.
He had just been on vacation.
He was just on vacation. That's why he had a beard, guys. Like he definitely
He does have
qualifies
to
it. He's
tell
like, I'm
us.
not one of those hippies, okay?
Yeah. I would never have a damn beard while
Yeah.
I'm working.
Dorothy Allison she says it's Chuck Bernstein or Goldstein, which is pretty impressive because that's a name. And then Wattenshade, like other detectives, says, he's keeping an open mind because he wants to solve the case really badly. So it's like, who's going to turn away information?
Yeah.
Okay, so then the show tells us who it's about. And the girl's name is Lori Zimmerman. She was 15 years old. She disappeared after leaving her aunt's house in April of 1984. Lori spent only one night in her family's new home in Hagerstown before disappearing. That comes from my research. Apparently, her mother put her in a taxi heading to South Hagerstown High School on the morning of April 6, 1984, and never saw her again. 8 days later, Lori's partially naked body is found in the forest 12 miles away. She had been beaten and suffocated, and the coroner found a foreign object lodged in her throat. They cut to Alison. She's in the car. She's talking to the detective. She says she feels that Lori was in front of a library when she met two brothers or two cousins. Oh, no, they're heading towards the detective at this point. The brothers were two cousins or twin friends of hers from her own neighborhood. She said she believes that Lori had been raped and murdered, and there's something the matter with her head. She says, quote, her jaw was broken, but that's not the cause of death. Then she says, quote, well, it must have been suffocation then because I can't breathe. I feel tremendous amounts of heat around this person. Then she says, quote, there's choking going on in her throat. She's choking or something, as though you were gargling or something, that type of situation I'm getting. Wattenshade says that there's no way Alison would have known about the object in the victim's throat. He's very surprised because it was a point in the investigation that they did not make public. Alison says Lori walked to the library and was picked up in an old yellow car, but from what I read, Lori stopped at her friend's or her aunt's house and then disappeared. And then they mentioned Wattenshade's hairpiece again, which I'm like, all right, leave the guy alone.
Poor guy. Come on.
Poor guy. Like, come on, leave him some dignity. They say that the janitor may have been Lori's stepfather, who is not a suspect, and Stack makes very clear that Chuck Bernstein or Goldstein are not suspects either. Although Dorothy is like, no, it's that guy. Like, she is very insistent, and I think it's very funny. They say that Lori had been laid to rest at Cemetery Plot 17. So that's where the 17 or the 71 was coming from. It doesn't matter that 1 and 7 are among the most commonly used numbers out of infinity number combinations.
No, that doesn't matter.
1 is number 1 and 7's number 11, but that doesn't matter. She said Cleveland, there's a turnoff at the crime scene in Cleveland Town Road. She talks about an old church, which she's on the East Coast in Maryland and New Jersey, and they're part of the original 13 colonies, the people that left the UK and Europe because it wasn't religious enough. You can throw a rock and hit a church, but that's fine too. Mr. Sachs says that all this information may be coincidence.
Could be.
Could be. Or it's part of a mosaic that will create a picture of what happened to Lori Zimmerman.
He was doing his smirking thing this episode, too.
He was.
He keeps it together. I'm impressed.
He does,
always,
but he
though.
gives like a tiny little smirk.
He indicates when he's like, is this silly, though?
Yeah.
So Dorothy Allison says, boop, brought Lori out to the woods, and he killed Lori because she wouldn't let him, quote, do whatever he wanted to do. And she screamed, and he hit her on the head. And then she says, not the head area, and she believes he killed her that way. But the editing's bad because in the scene before, she says she believes that she was choked and suffocated.
Not the head area?
Yeah. She says, not the head area. And then she says, and that's how she died. But then in the scene before, when she's on the bus, she says that, or in the car with Juan, she says that she was suffocated by something in the throat.
Right, yeah.
You know, and this is TV. Like, everyone knows that reality TV is fake. So, hi. So then she says, Boop is the man that murdered this girl, and they should start looking for him. She says she's positive he's the one. Detective Wattensheet's like, okay. Detective Wattensheet says that he's run the name that Dorothy Allison gave him through the, quote, police computers, but there's no known suspects by that name. Stack says that she came up with 50 clues, but only when the case is solved will they know how many of those clues are connected to the murder of Lori Zimmerman. I think maybe let's not call them clues because they're sentence fragments. They're not inherently clues, they're just statements. Somebody else could also call that retrofitting, which is what we're all picking up on here. Yes. If you make 50 statements and 3 are correct, people will focus on the 3 and say that you're psychic because that's how the human mind works. That's how people are. So let's see how right Dorothy Allison was.
I mean, I'm going to say no.
As of today, Lori Zimmerman's death remains unsolved.
Well,
As of today, the case is still open. 1999, 15 years after the crime, Maryland State Police in Hagerstown reopened the case, reviewing the evidence in hopes of finally bringing Lori's killer to justice. Sergeant Todd May of the state police said that he and others in the department specialize in the investigation of murders and complex cases. From time to time, old cases are reopened, May said, especially when they think information will come to light from the evidence they have based on new technologies. As of 1999, they had done 100 interviews and developed a lot of new leads. He also believes that people in the town have information and they haven't come forward. Lori likely knew the killer. It's his hope that anyone who believes they have information will come forward. As of April 2010, they have a suspect. There was a guy who murdered 2 other women in the same sort of way. Like, they think that he might have been involved, but he won't admit to it. Lori's mother, Sandra, is now 74 years old, and she's still waiting for someone. And it seems like the detectives that are currently involved, you know, one of them said, like, we keep in touch. I speak with her every few weeks. They're really trying, but this is such an old case, you know, and who knows what they have in terms of evidence. If anybody has any information about Lori Zimmerman, the state police in Hagerstown is 301-739-2101, or the Maryland State Police Support Unit at 1-410-290-0050.
nice.
So she wasn't able to help solve that one. But no one else has been able to solve it either. So
Yeah. Check our Instagram because we'll have a few posts about this episode with pictures and stuff. But it'd be fun to have a conversation on there about Dorothy Allison, or on Facebook, or on Patreon, or wherever.
Reddit. I mean, wherever.
I would just be interested to know what other people think about this sort of thing. Yeah, she's like, I like her. I get what you're saying, Alison. I agree with you. Like,
Yeah, I do think she wanted to help.
all right.
we made it.
Hey, oh my God, you guys, thanks for getting through that with us.
All right. Let's share and feel things. Alison, go.
So I read the book If You Really Love Me by Anne Rule. Georgia Hardstark covered this story on MFM like a couple of years ago. I was like, this story is so ridiculous. There's no way that this is real. I read the book. It's real. It's crazy.
Which
And who is
story?
it about again?
So it's about this guy. who basically convinces his daughter to murder his wife because he's having an affair with the wife's sister. And the girl goes to jail for it. I mean, it's fucking...
Yes. Is
It's
there
not
something
the
about a doghouse
Yes.
in this?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
It is
She has a crazy name too. What's her name?
cinnamon.
Yep.
Yes.
It is
Yep.
so bananas, you guys. You have to
Yep.
read it.
Okay. That story is crazy.
It is insane. I mean, it's a little like Anne Rule is great, but like since it came out so long ago, it's a little the writing style's a bit dated, but
Yeah.
like it is.
That
You're
story
just
is
like this is
nuts.
nuts.
Oh, that's
It's
great.
bananas.
Love it.
So absolutely read that. And then
Okay.
I've been watching the Madeline McCann documentary on Netflix. It too. I finished it. The last episode is nuts. It's such, I didn't know anything about it. I guess I wasn't really paying attention when it was happening, probably because I didn't have a kid. So
Same.
it was like a little on my radar. I had no idea what kind of like international media
Yeah.
frenzy was happening. I definitely recommend it. Watch it to the end because it's sad and it's frustrating and it's
Yeah.
infuriating. It's definitely worth the watch.
Speaking of Madeline McCann, I have been listening to the podcast called Maddie, which goes over the case in depth also. And then just yesterday I saw there was a documentary about it. I think I'll finish the podcast, or it's still coming out with episodes.
Yeah, it's still coming out.
But yeah, I didn't know a lot about that story at all. Pretty crazy. And then, I don't know, I've just been, liking the new season of Queer Eye, obviously.
Oh, I haven't even started it yet.
It's real good. Carolyn?
I've been listening to, well, for a while now, this pod called Nighttime, and he is doing a special series on Lindsay Suvarnarath, who was part of a duo who were going to shoot up a mall in Halifax.
I remember you
on
telling
Valentine's
us. I didn't
Day.
realize it was a series. I thought it was just an episode.
And he is interviewing her from prison.
Fuck.
And so, of course, there are a lot of mixed feelings on this. Like, he gets a lot of hate mail. The host's name is Jordan. And he gets a lot of people very upset that he's doing this and giving her a platform and allowing her to speak. And I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it either, but I'm that person who just has to listen to something like that, no matter how I feel about it. So it's pretty crazy. It's very interesting. I don't think I've just listened to just straight interviews like that. I mean, Bundy tapes are a little on that same vein, but with someone who is so crazy. It's...
How many episodes? Is it still going, or are you kind of binging
I thought it was over. There were 4, and I listened to all of them and binged it. And then another one just came out. And he wrote that he might do 4 more. So
Whoa.
I think he doesn't even know as he's going along
And
how much.
if you don't know a lot about the story, like I don't, is it fine to just start listening to it, though?
Yeah, he'll explain all
He'll
of
explain.
it. That's why
Okay.
I'm not
It's not
giving you a
just
lot of detail
interviews.
right
Yeah.
now in case you do want to listen to it.
Okay.
And what's it called again?
His podcast is called Nighttime.
Okay.
And it's just the special series on Lindsay Suvarnarath.
Wow.
Crazy.
Cool.
It's a little bananas.
Love it.
All right. I'm definitely going to listen to that.
Yep.
Next episode 16, we'll be covering the cases of Lester Garnier, an unexplained death, Jackie Purrington and Bill Purrington, lost loves, and Angelo Desideri, who is missing.
So that episode will be out in 2 weeks. And if you want more content from us, go to patreon.com/Resolve Mysteries Podcast and subscribe at the $5 a month level or higher. You'll get 2 extra episodes a month. We're doing a The Husband Did It series, and then also Unsolved Mysteries Through the 50 States series. We really, really appreciate your support over there so much. And we have lots of different levels where you can get little goodies from us too. You can also go to resolvemysteries.com/support to see some other ways to support the show, including finding how to do a billboard for someone if you liked the one that David did for Mona. Shout out Mona again. We love you. Happy honeymoon.
Congratulations.
And then also please send us your ideas for listener short stacks. If you've got stories, little things that you want to share with us, we would love to keep being able to put those out, and we love hearing from you. So our email is resolvemysteriespodcast@gmail.com, and our P.O. Box is another place you can send us these stories if you like to send letters.
You can send it to Resolved Mysteries Podcast, P.O. Box 14005, Portland, Oregon, 97293.
So-
For real this time, though.
Yeah. Shout out listener Lauren who tried to send us something and it got
Lauren,
sent
we're
back.
so sorry.
Lauren, we're
Try
checking our
again.
box
Yeah.
every day so that we
Hopefully-
can discuss whatever it is you tried to send us. And we are so sorry.
Yes. And then to see photos relevant to this episode and others we have covered, follow us on Instagram at @re_solve mysteries and Twitter and Facebook at Resolve the Pod. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Please leave us a 5-star review and
If iTunes will let you.
rating if iTunes isn't a dick bitch. So yeah, for every review we receive, we give $1 to an organization, and this month we are giving our donations to Give a Little, which is collecting money for victims of the Christchurch shooting in New Zealand. And yeah, just tell a friend about us, and we love you so much. Check out our Reddit like we talked about. Oh wait, we didn't talk about Reddit. Got that?
We did. We talked about Reddit in the beginning.
Oh,
it just
yeah.
seems like so long
That
ago.
was
was
2
literally
weeks ago.
so long
Yeah,
ago.
so check it out. And we'll see you on all the things, or we'll be in your ear holes again soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Record.
Can you hit record? Hit record?
Hit record. I put a pin in my hair
Pin?
and I write with a pin.
That was really good.
I've been working on it. Literally, it's all we do
been
at work.
Literally, that's what my work is.
I believe the children and your Australian accent are the future.
Yeah, thank you so much.